Now today we have a far larger program, but I'd like to introduce a couple of people who've made today possible. And thank you, Chris. First would be Dory Meyer. Dory, where are you? Dory, stand up.
Oh.
Dory has been sort of responsible for putting all of Forever Saroyan together into a website. We had a dream in the beginning when we ended up with the archive that we now have of doing a museum, a Saroyan museum somewhere, but that proved to be impossible from a cost standpoint as well as a long-term project. How were people going to see this thing? Where were they going to come from? Who was going to pay for it? And costs were just out of the question. So we said, well, we're going to do a virtual museum. We're going to put everything we have in a website and make people come to that from any part of the world and learn everything they want to know about William Saroyan from what we have in our archive. Whether it be his paintings, his early poetry, his songs, his novels, his letters to every magnificent writer of the time, we wanted to make those all available. So we started to do that, and Dory was responsible for the basic construction of all of that. In addition, Dory has been publishing, literally weekly, a piece she does called Place of Places, which is from Saroyan's book, The Place of Places. These are all places he's lived in, and stories that are magnificent. And these things are viewed all over the world. People who have traveled to these places will recognize the addresses, will recognize the times. And Dory goes behind the scenes and develops a whole story about it. So it's not only Saroyan's experience there, but it's the experience of being in that particular city at that particular time. And in fact, I had a nice exchange with a cousin from Fresno who had just seen one of Dory's pieces on Fresno, and he said, you know something, I'm learning more about Fresno reading Dory's work than I've known about all these years that I've lived here. So that was sort of a nice touch. But Dory has a degree in creative writing and in information, library and information science. She now lives up in the Sierras and is working remotely for us, but I rely on her judgment, decision-making, and so on related to the archive. Now, she was responsible when I was looking for someone. Dory was going to go on a sabbatical with her husband, and they were going to the mountains. I needed someone to come in and fill the role in the office and working with me. And it's not an easy process to find an archivist who is interested in an author who's been dead for 40 years, an author whose work is not necessarily read today, a film producer who really didn't produce many films, a songwriter who had fame but not that much fame, a painter whose paintings really were sitting in a office on Van Ness Avenue in San Francisco that really hadn't seen the light of day. They really hadn't been exhibited to any great extent. Anyway, Chris Garcia came on the scene for an interview, and Dory said, I'm not sure you're going to like this guy because he looks a little wild. I think you're going to want to hear what he has to say. He was born and raised here in Santa Clara, California, by librarians and a firefighter turned limo driver. After graduating from Emerson College with a BA in fine writing, literature and publishing, and an art history and visual studies minor, he joined the Computer Museum in Boston in 1998, before making the transition to what would become the Computer History Museum the following year. Over his 20 years at the museum, he worked in just about every position possible, eventually serving as curator, who brought attention to the world of computer graphics, art, music, and games. Over those years, he was lucky enough to work on several major exhibits, including curating sections in both Revolution, the first 2,000 years of computing, and software. He also worked on and created many small temporary exhibits on everything from popular culture topics to really strange phones. Anyway, his resume goes on, and I'm not going to attempt to read it all. All I can tell you is he's currently working on a book of his own on food, of all things. He's the father of 2 wonderful children. His wife, Vanessa, they live in Boulder Creek. He's a podcaster, and you've heard him speak here today, reading some of Saroyan's work. He is very, very, very committed to this project and is trying to bring it to life along with Dory in ways that it just simply has not taken place until now. It's interesting. This is an interesting adventure. We're here in Silicon Valley. We're here in Saratoga. How many of you knew that William's father, Armina, raised chickens in Campbell, just down the road here? And he passed away here in Campbell. How many of you know where he's buried? Armina?
Present.
He's buried here in San Jose, Oak Hill Cemetery. And if you ever read 74 Routable, that's a book by Saroyan, he writes in his first chapter in there about Arminak of Bitlis, his father. And it's a great chapter. And the father died at a very young age, and of course, William had to go with his entire family, the sisters and brother, to orphanage over in Oakland and lived there for several years until a family member was able to help bring them to Fresno. That 5 years was very instrumental in the development of Saroyan, not only as a person, but as a writer and an artist. But leaving behind for a second and looking at his father, Arminak. Arminak sort of led the family to America. He was in eastern part of Turkey just before the massacres, and he was able to leave, came by himself, and eventually brought the family over. We have a project that we're trying to complete one of these days, which is the translation of Arminak's journal, which he wrote in 1906 of that journal. It's a heartbreaking journal, but it is the truth of what so many Armenian families who had to escape Turkey at that time endured. And we've got this journal, pretty much translated, but more work to be done. But the father, now, you have to listen to this poem. He's written in 1906, before his family's here. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. It starts out, all alone. How sad it is to be alone, living as if held in a fist, writing mournful, endless laments, heartfelt sorrow, their only gist. How sad it is to be alone. May as well sleep beneath the lawn. May as well sleep beneath the lawn. Saroyan's father, Arminak, is buried at Oak Hill Cemetery under the lawn, alone, without even a marker on his plot. That is another project that we've been dreaming about, is putting a absolute important stone on that burial plot. His mother, of course, Takwi, is buried at Cypress Lawn up in Colma with Cosette, but the father remains here in San Jose at Oak Hill Cemetery, just for information. Now, before I introduce our guest speaker, I just want to read something to you. Now, my first archivist was Mary Alexander, and she worked with us in putting together a book of letters between William Saroyan and Archie Menasse, William's cousin. Today we have various members of the Menashian family here, and if you look at the last couple of publications that Dory did online, Place of Places, you're going to see some Archie Menashian watercolors included that are fabulous. Saroyan and Menashian were together continually here on the peninsula, visiting, laughing, gambling, but both absolutely knew how to enjoy life. We had a great opportunity to spend time with both of them growing up. But Saroyan wrote in his book, Here Comes, There Goes You Know Who, something that Mary Alexander put on her desk in front of her computer screen that I just can't put down. And he wrote, there are at least 10 million words of unpublished stuff already on hand here and there. Someday, perhaps a specialist of some kind will run through the stuff, or a little of it, and pick out a few words on the subject of gambling, for instance. In any case, whoever undertakes to mess with my papers has got his work cut out for him. Well, I can tell you this, there was never a statement written by Saroyan, because we have in our collection of goodies hundreds of thousands of words, if not more, of unpublished pieces that he wrote. And believe me, all of it is publishable. It just takes time to go through and work on it. Now, let's see, I think is Philip Scher here? Philip, please stand up. He's with the University of Stanford University. He is the Deputy University Librarian, and he's just taken the position that is going to bring us closer together because they control all of Saroyan's copyrights and his major archive, which we have used several times and continue to always refer to. You'll notice every time we have something published, we always have worked with Stanford in getting that approved and always give them credit for it. So it's very important that any of you are, doing that type of research or work, they have a huge archive there. It's just a little cumbersome to get to. But thank you for being with us, and give my regards to everybody. Excuse me for not standing, but I had a fall earlier in the week. I fell off a ladder, and I've hurt my knee.
What's your relationship?
Pardon?
What's your relationship?
Let's see. Well, I'm going to explain the relationship. First of all, I'd like to introduce my brother Bruce Janigian. This is the guy that got me into this mess. He a writer under a, what do you call it, pen name, Avery Mann. So he's also a very talented writer himself. And for years, 1962, 6, 7, I was involved in some stuff at school, and I edited the college literary magazine. And we won first prize in the United States for the best literary magazine on a college campus, San Francisco State College. And I never had the opportunity to really do anything with any of that because our father passed away. But for years, Diane Minasian, Francis Minasian, Vahan Minasian, stand up. These are members of the Minasian family. Let me tell you, we all grew up together. And one thing I knew was that Archie, Uncle Archie, and Willie exchanged letters all the way back to the beginning. 50 years of letter writing. And Bruce introduced me to a collection of letters, my brother Bruce, in Berkeley at Serendipity Books. And he said, I know you're thinking about doing something with these letters. Let me introduce you to Serendipity Books. And if you can secure those letters, maybe you can do something with it. So he left me, and next thing I knew, I was dealing with the owner there, and I bought the letters. But that was only half the story, because Uncle Archie had saved all of Willie's letters. But Willie's collection of Archie letters weren't there. So we had to go and find the letters from Willie to Archie, and Archie to Willie. Anyway, all at Stanford. So we got all of the collection together and we published a book of letters. And that was the beginning of something that at times I wish I never got involved in, but I'm in it now to a degree that I can't turn around. Now, what's my relationship? Our mother was Stella Minasian, Archie Minasian's sister, part of the family. She was Willie's first cousin. Willie's mother, Takwi, and our grandmother, Paransim, were sisters. Okay? There was one other sister in there who ended up being a Bagdasarian, Verkin Bagdasarian, Ross's mother, Paransim, our mother, Willie's mother, Takwi, were all like this. So we all grew up together. And I happened to spend time with William, and so we're cousin. Not first cousin was removed, as I say. Bruce spent time with Willie as his attorney for a period of time. So we were all very, very close. Vahan Minasian here, that's our grandfather's name on my mother's side. He died at a young age like Willie's father. Willie writes in 74, Rue Thibault, if you've heard that book, and if you haven't, I really recommend it. He writes about Vahan Minasian, his namesake, as being the one who really made him realize who the hell he was. So all things come together.